talking to us about Real Results' approach to developing and retaining our service desk staff. Carolyn, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's always really embarrassing when everyone says the most respected person in the UK contact centre industry. I was previously number 2 though, so at least I've gone up a peg with that. But just a bit of background about me and kind of what I do. I started off working in Fujitsu doing this stuff. So I was responsible for training first-line agents and team managers for the North of England and Northern Ireland service desks. So I kind of cut and carved a pattern of development for them in that role moving through, which is the basis of what I'll talk to you about today. The work that I do now is with contact centres, so more broadly than sort of managed service IT desks. So it's kind of that whole contact centre piece. So we work with universities and councils and private sector organisations and working with the customer service contact centre part of their businesses. So that's a bit about what I do. And then we also work with other organisations looking at talent development more generally. So that kind of gives you a little bit of an overview about us. So I'm not going to go through this in massive amounts of detail, but the stuff that I have been doing now, I've been doing for about nearly 15 years probably. So there you go. I'll put some contact details up at the end as well. So if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn or Twitter or Facebook or whatever, then we can do all of that. So a bit more about Real Results. So like I said, we work with business to business and business to consumer organisations, including public sector things and private sector. And that just gives you a little bit of an overview about who they are. So what I tend to be really passionate about and why I think I was fortunate enough to kind of get this award is it's about making contact centres particularly a career of choice for people. That's what I'm really passionate about. And I think historically what can happen is that people go to work, whether it's a contact centre, a service desk environment, as, kind of fall into it, frontline support role, oh yeah, talking on the phone and yeah, I'll see where I go. And then they kind of pedal and try and maybe get out of it and go up and out into the organisation, which is great. And part of the work that I do is about making a really clear path for people to be able to do that. But the other thing is about it not necessarily being seen as the grunt work on the phone that nobody else wants to do. So that's what I'm really passionate about, making that a career of choice, so that when kids say, I want to go and work in a contact centre or, I want to do frontline support on a service desk, that we go, oh, that's great, not really. So that's kind of my goal. So what I'm going to talk about in this session until about 4:20 is how to create a clear structure of progression. Now, you might have this already, so again, it could just be a benchmark exercise for you this afternoon, but if you haven't already got this mapped out and you don't already give it to every new starter when they join your organisation, then this might be really helpful for you. And thinking about how you create and support learning opportunities for people when they join your organisation, and what those solutions might look like. So, okay, you could bring in a company like mine to deliver some of that, but there's got to be some in-house provision to deliver kind of your induction and your new starter training and the more technical side of the job. So we need to be thinking about how that fits. And what I really see as an output of the work that we do is that our clients get to identify and develop people from the front line to be business leaders of the future. And actually, I was just in the session downstairs, the Managed Service Desk Award Q&A, and one of the guys on that panel there who's running in one of the finalist categories said, I started as a frontline agent. And that's what we want to see. That's how I think you get the grounding in the business and how we move them through and keep hold of our talent so that you can then create an inspired and motivated workforce. And really think about solving succession planning headaches. If we were having this conversation in 2007, it would probably be slightly different because churn would probably be higher, potentially, for most of you than what it is now. Now people are going, I don't want to go, it's safe here. And you're going, please, you're the ones I wanted to kind of churn out, potentially. And you're stuck with them. But, still, we do need to think about succession planning and how we hang on to our talent and how we develop the right people through the organisation. So that's what I'm going to talk about. And it breaks down into these 6 key areas. So the first one is about how you do your induction and how you manage the psychological contract of people when they join your organisation. Okay? The next one is thinking then about once they're in, what on-the-job training are you offering them and what opportunities are there for qualifications that they can pursue. And alongside that, we need to also be thinking about their soft skill development. And that's kind of my real passion area and where my organisation currently works with clients. Then we need to think about what are the career management routes. So how, if you are going to develop people up and out, are you going to do that? And thinking about how you make that process fair and equitable. So it's not just, I'm this team manager's favourite, so I've got this opportunity, or I work for this team manager who is really proactive and they go out and they source secondment opportunities and bring them back and offer them to the team. Whereas, or it might be that I'm the most gobbiest, service desk person and I've shouted the loudest and I've gone out and I've found this opportunity for myself. So we need to think about how we make that fair and equitable for everybody. And the other thing that we can also think about is apprenticeship. So just give me a show of hands if you're already using apprenticeships. Okay, so quite a few of you. So I won't go through that then in massive amounts of detail, see how much time we've got towards the end. But I would also be interested to find out afterwards, if we get a chance over coffee, how you found that. Because I've heard, with the clients that we work with, it's a very mixed experience, and there are certain things, he's rolling his eyes, yeah, very mixed experience, and the kind of things that we need to think about to make it a bit more smooth and a bit less painful at times might be good there. Okay, so some of the criteria for success, and I'm sure you've already got this. So performance management processes are in place. So that's all your appraisals, all your one-to-ones, all that kind of stuff is happening. Everybody's got a set of objectives and they're reviewed regularly, and that training needs are established through that process. And then you've got solutions in place to meet them. So I'm kind of working on that assumption that that is the case. And that development activity is undertaken regularly. So it's not just kind of feast and famine, and that it's done either by in-house or by external programs or a blend of things. So that's what we need to have happening. And also, where possible, you're looking for opportunities for people to move around your organisation. So whether that's within a service desk contact centre environment or elsewhere, moving into finance or marketing or whatever, and they've got opportunities to get out and about in the wider organisation. And that development and selection procedures are in place to make that a fair and equitable process about who gets to move around. Now, this is one of my favourites, and it's kind of quite a bold thing to think about, but we definitely experimented with this when I was in Fujitsu. And it was this concept that external recruitment activity is only done when you can't recruit that internally. And it sounds really obvious, but it meant putting quite a bold promise in place, which at the time we said, we will not recruit for any role other than frontline service desk agent for a period of time. Still to graduates, but it was that frontline service desk. That's the entry point to Fujitsu. So for a while, that was one of the only ways in which you could join the call centres and technical support part where I worked. The only way you could join our organised stream of the organisation. Does that make sense? So that we could then develop and create the spaces to move people and slot people around, because otherwise we just have a bottleneck. And then we're doing all this activity and there's nowhere for people to go, and then they get frustrated and they leave. Yeah, so that was kind of the thing that we sort of started experimenting with around that. So we need to think about how we identify that internal talent, and then we know who we're working with. Yeah, so it's thinking about which people do you want to put your energies into? Are you going to put them into everybody? And how is that going to work? So Some implications for this. Definitely, we need to have senior management and that decision-making level brought in to make those kind of promises, those bold statements, like I've just said. It's got to happen from a strategic level and roll down through the organisation. So what's the vision, what's the idea, where the organisation wants to go, and how are the people part of that strategy to deliver on that? So what do we need to do? Then it's the strong team leader community, and we do lots of work today in terms of developing that team leader community, because again, I've found in my work as a consultant over the last 10 years that is very hit and miss. So I'll walk into an organisation and onto a service desk floor or contact centre environment, and I will look at how it's arranged, and I will see and feel whether I can spot out of that bank of desks who is the team leader. Can I tell? Can I spot them? So, I would expect to see 12 people all on the phones and one person either, walking around or talking to people or listening in and reviewing calls at their screen. How can I feel what is the team leader like? And in one environment, I walked in and the team leader was sat like this, and everyone else was taking calls. Thought, yeah, I can spot who the team leader is on that bank of desks, but is it a good message that I'm picking up? So that consistency word as well. So making sure that there is consistency between the different teams, and we'll look a little bit about some of the best practice stuff around structure. That senior leaders role model behaviours, so that's one example in the body language, but how they walk through the contact centre or service desk environment. Do they just walk through and not say good morning to the agents? Because that's going to demoralise them straight away. Or, when we talk a bit about psychological contract, they walk through and go, why is it such a mess? Get those coats off the backs of chairs and, no photos and, and change things when they're only there once a month or whatever. And that really, again, demotivates the people who are there day in, day out, taking the calls. So we'll touch a bit on that as well. So I'm going to talk about transformational leadership qualities. That's the stuff that gets people to do what you need them to do, not because you're making them, not because you're forcing them, you're paying them, or you're going to beat them with a big stick if they don't. It's about because they want to, because you inspire them, because they want to follow the direction of the organisation and they're bought into it. So that's what we're talking about there. That there is sustained investment and commitment. So you go behind this strategy knowing it's not going to happen overnight. The stuff that I'm talking about here is going to take probably a minimum of 12 months to get it all in place and get it working really well, depending on where you are in the process right now. So that's where we are. Combining it with other HR processes as well. This is really important. It doesn't stand alone. We need to think about what is the culture of the organisation, what's happening in our industry more generally, where are we located physically, how easy is it for us to recruit and retain the right people. That all comes into it. I'm working from the premise that this is the standard structure for most teams. Okay, so we've got a team of maybe around 15 people, and there is some best practice data out which says 8 to 15 is about the optimum number for most teams to work under one team manager. But again, it depends on the industry that you're in and how many calls and how many channels and what you're doing. But a team of 15 with a coach layer, so a floor walking, somebody who's on the phone. This is about, again, making sure that second line is kind of cascading some knowledge down to first line perhaps, and that, we are looking to increase the amount that's resolved at the first line. So the coach can be really helpful in that. And then going into the team leader. And then the team leader going into your contact centre manager, ops manager, whatever you want to call them. Yeah, so that's kind of what I've got in my mind when I'm talking about this stuff. So some of the deliverables that we want to make sure are happening is that the recruitment, the selection, and the induction is all working really well. So when I'm talking about this concept of psychological contract, are you all with me? Do you all understand what I mean by that? Some of you are nodding, some of you are just looking at me, wondering when coffee is, I think. So do you have that idea about when you started in your job, you had a clear idea in your mind about what it was going to be like to work there? Yeah? And did that deliver for you? No, yes, no. So the understanding with psychological contracts is that in your heads, you have a set of T's and C's that are not written down anywhere, but that are existed in your head. And when that's breached in the job, that causes you anxiety. Yeah? And that's one of the reasons why we see people come into a role and within the first 3 months they leave. It's the biggest reason why there is a mismatch between what they were sold in that recruitment and induction phase and what reality was like. So we need to get really clear on that. So we tell them at the beginning what exactly the job role is, yeah, warts and all. And I think we're in a better position to do that rather than, when we were in the boom period, right up to 2007, crashing in 2008. If you turned up for the job for a frontline agent and you were breathing, chances are you might have got it, yeah? So in highly competitive business park situations, people were hopping from one job to the next for 50p an hour more around the business park. We don't get that quite so much now. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I think, is debatable at times. But what we do want to be having is this healthy psychological contract. We want individuals to feel like they can approach their line manager and that they're really clear about what they're there to do and what the opportunities are. So to get that, they need daily and weekly comms, with their team manager. They need ongoing, adjusting and affirming feedback. Okay, and that's again where that coach role can come in and support the team manager and can be really helpful. They need access to the training opportunities, and they need to be having, quarterly, formal, one-to-one reviews at least. And then they need to be having their annual appraisal, their career review, and thinking about how their career is progressing. Now, not everybody wants to become the next ops manager, and that's probably just as well, because we can't fit everybody into that funnel. But we do need to be thinking about, well, what do they want? And if they're happy just to come to work and keep doing what they're doing, that's great. And I'll talk about that in a bit more detail. So let's get a bit more into this psychological contract piece, because I know that there are lots of people who start their jobs and then get really disillusioned really quickly. And on the other side, I know that there are a lot of people working in environments, in offices, where they're on the phones all day and that's their job. And then if ever you try and get them to move desks from here to there, okay, that becomes a big issue. Has anyone ever had that? Yeah. So this is my window. And it's like my only access to the outside world for the 40 hours a week I'm sat here. And you want me to move there? Yeah? Or if you have coats on the back of chairs and you try and put in a new rule that says no more coats on the backs of chairs, suddenly that becomes an issue. Or you change the contents of the vending machine or the type of coffee in the vending machine. Or you take away the actual kettle or the boiler and tell them they can only have hot water out of the vending machine. Or you change the car parking, yeah? Or you change the chair. Where is my actual chair with my name on it? Yeah, I've got an actual chair. It should have my name on it, and all hell will break loose if we can't find that chair with their actual name on it. Why do these things exist more in the environment where people are giving support over the phone? Why do you think that as an industry, service desk, contact centre environments, we have more of that? That panic, that kind of, don't change things. This is my little universe here. Because they don't get to move out of it very often. Something as simple as having, a wireless headset is absolutely liberating. I don't have a physical chained to the desk anymore. That's just beautiful. You know, I think that's on a psychological level really quite important. So it's thinking about how can we match the fact that, you know, we understand this is the psychological contract and we need to be a little bit more gentle when we're implementing some of the changes that we might want to implement. Because what seems a tiny thing when you're not tied to that desk, it might seem tiny to you, but for them, it's a really big deal. Does that make sense? So I think sometimes that gets missed and it gets overlooked. The induction, and you know, I'm sure you've all been there too, you know, 200 slides on the history of the company you've just joined. Good luck absorbing all of that because there's a test at the end, you know. Why do we do that to people? So they've come in and we've not given them a pass, by the way, so they have to put their hand up like they're at school every time they need to go to the toilet because they can't get back in. And we sit them there and we go, you know, this is what you've joined. Here's 200 slides on the history. Yeah, it doesn't really do people justice to think, yeah, I'm so glad I joined this organisation on day one. So we need to think about it. I've got a fact sheet. If you want it at the end, you can email me, called How to Jazz Up Your Induction. Okay, so it's specifically about how you take dry content that you know you need to get across, but you can get it across in a funkier way. Okay, so we need to make it snappy. We need to do interactive, two-way, engaging sessions that take into account individual learning style theory, yeah, and accelerated learning. So if there's any trainers, coaches in the room or people that have studied this stuff, you'll know what I mean. But it's about visual, you know, imagery, colour, using music, using training toys, making people feel kind of more engaged by the environment. And even simple things like doing your induction in a room and then halfway through, the trainer and the inductees get kicked out because the boss wants to have a meeting, an impromptu meeting. And it's what messages is that sending as well. Or I've seen them doing inductions in the kitchen, you know, or in a corner of the office where they've been told they can't make too much noise because everyone else is on the phone. So we need to be thinking about the messages that is sending to people. And we need to make sure that we're matching what we said it was going to be like. And, you know, as part of your recruitment, and if you're doing your recruitment in-house, that is, are you taking them around for a tour? Or do you go, well, we won't show them that because it'll really put them off if they see kind of where they're going to be sitting and where they're going to be working, yeah? So that's quite an interesting question in itself. So sort out the basics so that people know where they're parking, you know, give them a tour of the building, make sure they have got a pass and they can go freely to the toilet without having to ask permission. To borrow somebody else's pass to go to the toilet is just horrible. And then avoiding lengthy, passive, what I call the sitting by Nelly listening sessions. So if you're recruiting people to work on your service desk, you know, how are you passing across the technical information? This is how you use our screens. These are the types of calls you're going to get. And they sit them usually with one of the more kind of advanced members of the team who really, 9 times out of 10, they might be lovely, but they really don't want this incumbent, right, forced upon them, but they'll do it. But they're doing their job. And, you know, they're on the phone and they're flicking through the screens 100 miles an hour and they're asking all these questions. And the new starters sat here going, what? And that's for the first hour. And by the second hour, they've given up. Yeah, and they're staring out the window and thinking, oh, is this right for me? And then by the afternoon, they're going, what time am I going home? What am I having for tea? Yeah. So the lengthy passive listening sessions aren't particularly helpful. So let's think about on-the-job training and qualifications. Use in-house trainers and coaches. That's absolutely a key part of the strategy. And definitely one of the things we did at Fujitsu was develop a team of what we called virtual trainers. So taking some of the service desk agents who said, actually, I would quite like to do training, but we didn't necessarily have the budget or the capacity to have a full-time or the need to do a full-time in-house training team for induction. But But these guys were much better placed to do the induction than some of the more central trainers that had never actually worked on the service desk. Yeah? So that's useful to maybe think about, can we bring them off and do some train the trainer with them, train them up in how to do the induction, and then just pull them off when we need them to come and do that bit for us. But that whole train the trainer piece is really important, and also thinking about how you select who gets that opportunity in a fair and equitable way. Because just picking the gobbiest advisor to be a trainer or a coach doesn't work. So we need to think about it from a kind of more holistic perspective about what are the qualities, what are the skills, and giving them the proper support and training. Yeah? We want to avoid this sideways syndrome of collecting bad habits. So that sitting by Nelly thing, right? We think we're doing all right with that. You know, we put them with somebody who we know is one of our star top performers. But also that star top performer will have some bad habits. They will have picked up some shortcuts. There will be some things that potentially you don't know that they do unless you're really hot on your speech analytics. There will be things that will be going through the net and you don't necessarily know. So we want to avoid some of that. We want to be using formal call coaching. Okay, so again, if you've got speech analytics, this is so much more easy to do. Just put your hand up if you're using speech analytics for your coaching. One, okay, not as many as I might have thought. Okay, so thinking about when you're doing call, you all record everything, yes? No, okay. Okay, let's go back to 3 steps. So if we've got the opportunity then to coach people, are we doing it by sideways live listening? Or are we not doing the coaching? Should we go back? If we're doing the coaching, how are you doing your coaching?
The team does the coaching.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are they listening in live?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Which is a start, yeah? Because what we want to think about, if you want to increase the first time fix rate at your front line, what are the opportunities that we've got to do that? Yeah? It's thinking about listening to those calls and going, you didn't need to escalate that. You could have fixed that there. Yeah? But if we're not listening to every single call, a high proportion of them will be slipping through that net. Putting in a tool like speech analytics means that every time an agent doesn't ask the key questions that you've told the speech analytics tool to measure, it then is processed overnight on the server and it drops into the team leader's inbox in the morning and it says, listen to this call, and this call. And then you sit with that agent and you have that conversation to say, why did you not resolve that there? Let me help you to resolve that there. So for me, I think that is a fantastic way to do it. Before the technology was invented to do that, what we would do is have call recordings of everything, and the team leader or the coach would manually pick out at random some things that they might want to listen to then try and find some opportunities to try and coach people where they could have a gap, yeah, between this is what we want you to do and this is what you actually did, and we need to close that gap. But the problem with that is that obviously the team manager, the coach, spends so much time dragging through all this stuff to try and find some nuggets of gold to coach with, yeah? And they're playing, rewinding, writing and making notes. If we haven't got the call recording, we're going back even further and we are just doing live side-by-side listening, and it's really awkward then because we can't say, press pause. You know, we can do a bit of like, can you put this user on hold? But, you know, can we press pause and have this conversation? Or, you know, you said that a bit, well, I didn't. And if we haven't got the call recording, how can we play that back and analyse it and debrief it? So when we're talking about this call coaching, how that happens, the process to get there, the documented processes of this is what we want you to ask, these are the solutions, these are the knowledge banks that you should be using when the user says this, go and look at this. Yeah? So that all of that is clearly mapped out for people, and that every agent is having 2 or 3 calls a week listened to and fed back side by side offline with the coach or team manager, depending on your volumes and the durations of your calls. Obviously, you apply common sense to that benchmark, but that's the idea, so that we can continuously improve and work to reduce average handling time and increase the first time fix rate. Yeah? And the calibration of that coaching is also really important, so that the team leaders have all been trained together about we're all consistent here, about what we're looking for. And also the style, the soft skills stuff. You know, what do you want the style to be like? The voice of your desk. You know, is it changeable depending on who you get through to? You get a different experience. And of course, there will always be a little bit of that with personalities, but we do need to be thinking about having a consistent customer experience to some degree. So that goes into the coaching calibration sessions as well. And we also want to be thinking about benchmarking our work against occupational standards, so thinking about things like the e-skills type frameworks with all the competencies, so you don't have to go out and invent what active listening sounds like, yeah? It's already out there. Active listening contains this, this, and this component, and therefore that's what we should be training and coaching people to be doing, yeah? So you don't need to invent that wheel, so you can look at the MVQs, the e-skills, and think about whether you're awarding accredited qualifications. Okay, so whatever industry specific you're in, what is good for you to link to. Okay. So soft skill development, and again, in-house or whether you do it externally, I would start with thinking about what are the call quality scores. Yeah, so providing we're doing all that coaching, yeah, and we've got that call quality score, what is it at and where do we want to get to? And are the gaps on the technical side being plugged? That's a given, all your skills matrix stuff. And then on the soft skills side, what do we need to be looking at to get that raised? So I'd be thinking about whether it's sales, customer satisfaction, retention, your SLA achievement. You know, this is all good for your organisational reputation. We want to be able to say with confidence in bid meetings and pitch presentations that your frontline are consistently achieving this stuff. It also helps with recruitment as well, because, you know, we don't want people coming in, getting slammed, leaving, and then saying, oh, it was hell on earth working there. And they tell all the friends and all the family in the local area, and then nobody wants to come and work on your desk because it's got a bad reputation. So we need to be thinking about making that all working really nicely. Making sure that this soft skills stuff is creative, and that is absolutely my passion. Again, I've got another fact sheet which is about how you creatively design training activities with no money. Yeah? So if you're working just doing this in-house, you know, what you can do with a pack of Post-its and a flip chart and some scented markers, you know, you can just run and do all sorts of things. Creative creation of learning content. It doesn't have to be, you know, really expensive, fancy stuff. If you can do some of the more fancy stuff, then you might want to go down the more bespoke e-learning creation, and you can do some wonderful videos and webinars, and once you put that investment into that, then obviously you can use it again and again, so that's great. Thinking about running competitions in the service desk, so, you know, whether it's done on a weekly or a monthly basis, making sure that you're using it to refresh and embed that learning as well, so it isn't just a case of, right, you've been through that training, that's ticked on your skills matrix and never again revisited. And making sure that we can do some bite-sized sessions. And then that works really well if you find it hard to release people, you know, for long periods of time. So just to do what I would call a power hour or something like that can be really great, because it will just lift spirits. If you notice the times in the week when your call volumes might drop, then that might be a good time to do a power hour and schedule those in and just give them that boost. And an example of a soft skills case study that we did at Real Results is with the billing contact centre in Whitehaven, which was for United Utilities. So it was written up in the call centre training handbook. Don't buy that book on Amazon, because I can get it for you cheaper, because they put our case study in. So listening, confident communication, ownership, proactivity, initiative, rapport, accuracy, and respect are the 8 things in the Pulse 8 course. Okay, so these were the soft skills that the agents worked on a fun, interactive, one-day workshop that increased their call quality by over 20%. So over the next 6 months, agents who had been really hesitant, really unsure, placing the customers on hold for long periods of time, trawling the knowledge bank, suddenly got much more confident in themselves. Even if they still didn't know all the technical answers, they were providing a much better front end on that customer experience. They then went on to win the top call centre for customer service, telecoms and utilities sector, and we rolled that programme then out to 7,000 staff, because the other thing that you might notice is that it's not just your guys on the phone. So if you've got hardware technicians or other things where it feeds out to, there are other parts of the service chain for us to consider with this as well. So it's no good just getting that front end all singing and dancing and wonderful and smiley and happy and really clever if then it passes over to somebody else and the whole thing falls apart. So that was quite good that they spotted that and it went out wider, and then they won Best Customer Experience Programme for that. So thinking about developing leaders of the future, clear career maps, really important. How I get from A to B, what are the stages and the options? Do you offer mentoring in your organisation? Do you offer secondment opportunities? The opportunity for people to go out and shadow? Have you got that internal succession planning in place? This is typically what I see happening. So we have, in this kind of low potential, low performance box, there's a mix of sponges who are new. So absolutely, they have got low performance because they don't know stuff yet. And then we've got monkeys who are consistently poor performers. And every organisation that I work with has some monkeys. Then we've got our high potential, but still a bit low on the performance people, our rising stars. And they just need that bit of extra help and push to move across. We've got people who have got high performance, but they don't want to move onwards and upwards. Thank you very much. They're quite happy as they are. They want to come in, work-life balance, do a good job, go home. Brilliant. We all need an element of rocks in our service desks. And then we need to have some stars, so people who we can have as using back as these mentors for other people in the organisation. Yeah? And those are our leaders, our current leaders. And we will use the stars as assessors in the assessment and development centres, which is the way in which you decide perhaps some of the talent pools who goes into the potential opportunities. So finding the value and sharing the bigger picture in your training is really important. I'd love to claim this Confucius quote as my own, but I think it's about 450 BC. So I don't think I'll pass for that. But involve me and I will understand. You're familiar with that? So when you're thinking about how you're passing on knowledge to that front line, you've got to involve them in that process. Yeah? Because the other part of that quote, tell me and I forget. Yeah? Show me I may remember, but involve me and I will understand. So make it interactive, make it fun. Give them face-to-face communication. Don't just cascade emails and go, why did you not tell that user that? Did you not see that email? Yeah, it doesn't work. So we need to manage underperformance and negativity so that there are consequences for those monkeys. We want to be celebrating their success. If you want the slide deck, by the way, I'm sure we can sort that out for you. Just moving quickly, this idea about this long-term development programme, this is another major part of our work at Real Results. 12-month programmes that involve all these things. And this is how we get people to come on board and go through a series of modules, action learning sets. We take peers from all over the organisation and get them to bond together, and they become a future-proof group for your business. Yeah, so taking those rising stars, basically, and giving them plenty of learning, development and support, exposing them to other parts of your business and then in the future, these are going to be your actual stars. Okay, and the things in which we would do, those are some examples. So to get onto this program, we might run the assessment or the development centre that I mentioned, using your stars as assessors and put them through, anyone can apply to be on the centre, and then you'll do a filter based on some criteria. Then you'll put, maybe 8 people on the centre with your assessors. Do you use this process? Okay, so at Fujitsu I used to run what were called TACs, Technical Assessment Centres. So to move from the first line to the second line, you had to go through an assessment centre. Or to move from the second line to the third line, you went through an assessment, because everyone wanted to do it. Yeah, everybody wanted to move. I want to be fourth line. Well, okay, great. But you need to prove, and so does everyone else. So we'd get assessors and run a day of activities, technical-based and soft skill-based, and we would score them on each activity. And then if they got 59.9%, they failed. If they got 60% or more, they went into a pool, and the next time an opportunity came up for fourth line support, we would interview from that pool. And we wouldn't run another assessment centre until we'd used all that pool. But that was the way in which we would make it more structured, more fair, more equitable, and more robust. So there we go. The key things, if you go with this, are making sure you help people prepare for centres, that they know what to expect, you don't just drop them in it, that you train your assessors effectively. And if those people that get 59.9%, those fails, we need to think about how we're going to offer them support and development opportunities so that they can have 6 to 12 months rest and work on that, and then you can apply again. Yeah? You might want to not be as blunt as that, and you might want to have a bit of a grey area and say, depending on how much time you've had to prepare, we might look at people on 57 to 59.9 on a case-by-case basis. But that's entirely up to you. So apprenticeships, this is my final piece. I'll just whip through this. Some of the things that I noticed make this work best are when there is a good pool of 16 to 18-year-olds in the local area. So again, thinking about the stuff that we did in Whitehaven. Don't know, is anyone from Whitehaven? I'm not going to offend anyone if I say the only opportunities were to either go and work in the contact centre that was run by United Utilities or work at the big Tesco's. Pretty much, yeah? It's right out on the coast. If you wanted to stay in Whitehaven and you didn't want to go to college or university, you leave school at 16. That's pretty much your option, yeah? So for that sort of geographical location, apprenticeships can work really well because it's quite competitive and it's a good opportunity, and people are then more willing to stick at it. So a consistent and supportive coordinator. I call this person Mum. Yeah, it's almost like a bit of a mum role, but it could be a dad role, but it's that looking after role that goes on, yeah, because that's kind of what's needed. To hold their hands, to wipe their tears, to give them some encouragement and support. I don't mean to be patronising, but these are young people. And, things happen, they split up with boyfriends and girlfriends, and it is the end of the world, and it stops them coming into work. And if they don't have this supportive role, they're going to blow this opportunity of a lifetime, yeah? And we don't want that. So that definitely would help. Having the clear structure, the modules in place, so they know what they need to do and where they need to do, and mum or dad role checks up on that. Because the number of apprentices that have told me that they were at college, and when I've checked, they weren't. Yeah, you won't believe. And commitments that are required are communicated clearly, and they sign up, and you make them sign, not in blood. That's just me, but making sure that we're doing that and that they are absolutely clear what's expected. There we go. I'll leave that up in case you do want to connect with me.
I'm afraid, because of the next commitment, there isn't actually time at the minute for questions. Obviously, Carolyn is around. Grab her, not literally.
Or you can, if you want.
There you go. Guys, can we thank Carolyn, please?
Thank you.